Judge Everett slammed his gavel, so hard the sound echoed through the packed courtroom. "So you're telling this court," he said with a mocking smile, "that a 17-year-old wants us to believe he didn't steal a luxury car because he was simply borrowing his father's vehicle?" Laughter spread through the gallery. Even two bailiffs struggled to hide their smiles. The young black teenager standing at the defense table lowered his eyes, but refused to look defeated. "My father gave me permission," he said quietly. Judge Everett leaned back in his chair. "And where is this mysterious father?" Silence. The judge chuckled. "I thought so." The courtroom laughed even harder. What no one realized was that within the next 30 minutes, the same judge would be standing instead of sitting, and every person who had laughed would suddenly become painfully quiet, because the teenager had been hiding one truth, not to escape punishment, but to protect someone else. Henry Carter hadn't planned to speak that morning. His public defender had advised him to answer only direct questions. Don't argue, don't react, don't volunteer information. The case looked terrible. Henry had been stopped driving a brand new black Bentley through one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city just after midnight. The police report claimed he became evasive when questioned. An anonymous caller had reported a suspicious black teenager driving an expensive vehicle. Within minutes, 6 patrol cars surrounded him. The officers ordered him onto the pavement at gunpoint. Neighbors stood outside recording everything with their phones. Someone shouted that he had probably stolen the car. No one asked whether it belonged to him. By sunrise, the video had already spread across social media, but viewers only saw the arrest, not what happened before or after. That missing truth was exactly why Henry remained calm now, because he knew something everyone else didn't. He simply wasn't ready to reveal it. Prosecutor Daniel Brooks stood confidently. The facts are straightforward. He held up photographs. The defendant was operating a $200,000 luxury vehicle. Another photo appeared. He possessed no registration. Another, no proof of ownership. Then another, and initially refused to identify the owner. He turned toward the jury. What conclusion would any reasonable person reach? Several jurors nodded. Henry remained silent. The prosecutor smiled. Exactly. Everything pointed toward guilt. At least, that was exactly what someone wanted everyone to believe. Henry's attorney quietly placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll explain later." Henry shook his head slightly. "If we wait much longer..." He stopped himself. The lawyer looked confused. "What aren't you telling me?" Henry looked toward the courtroom doors. "They're coming." Only they weren't there yet. Judge Everett frowned impatiently. This court will not waste taxpayers' time waiting for imaginary witnesses. His voice grew sharper. "You've had every opportunity to provide evidence." Henry finally looked directly at him. "I asked someone not to come." The courtroom became quiet. Judge Everett raised an eyebrow. "You told your father not to defend you?" "Yes." "Why?" Henry hesitated. "I thought protecting him was more important." That answer made no sense. "Protect him from what?" The judge laughed again. "I've heard many excuses over 27 years. This may be the most creative." Once again, the courtroom laughed, but one woman sitting in the back didn't. She immediately reached into her purse and dialed a number. Across town, a black SUV pulled away from a federal courthouse. Inside sat a man reading legal documents. His phone vibrated. He answered immediately. Only 5 words changed everything. "They're mocking Henry publicly." The man closed a folder. "Which courtroom?" After hearing the answer, he told the driver one sentence. "Turn around." Back inside, the prosecutor requested immediate sentencing for unlawful possession of stolen property, pending further investigation. Henry's attorney objected. "There is no evidence the vehicle was stolen." The prosecutor smiled. "Then where is the owner?" Henry stayed silent. Again, that silence looked like guilt, but in reality, it was loyalty. Judge Everett sighed dramatically. "I've seen this pattern before." He looked directly at Henry. "Young man, life becomes much easier when you stop inventing stories." Henry answered softly, "I'm not lying." "Then prove it." "I can't." The judge shook his head. "Exactly." The audience interpreted Henry's silence as surrender. They had no idea he was counting the seconds. Suddenly, the courtroom doors opened. Nobody looked at first. Another lawyer entering wasn't unusual, but then every bailiff stood simultaneously. The courtroom slowly turned. A tall man wearing a dark navy suit entered with two federal marshals walking several steps behind him. The room instantly changed. Judge Everett stopped speaking. Even the prosecutor looked confused. The visitor wasn't smiling. He walked directly toward Henry. Without saying a word, Henry finally smiled for the first time all morning. The stranger placed one hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry I'm late." The courtroom froze. Judge Everett cleared his throat. "Sir, identify yourself." The man reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, for identification. The bailiff examined it. His expression changed immediately. He walked quickly toward the judge. After reading credentials, Judge Everett's face lost its color. The visitor spoke calmly. "My name is Jonathan Carter." He paused. "I am Henry Carter's father." The prosecutor folded his arms. "That still doesn't establish ownership." Jonathan nodded. "Correct." Then he placed several documents onto the clerk's desk. Vehicle registration, insurance records, purchase agreement, digital title, security authorization. Everything perfectly matched. The Bentley legally belonged to him, but that wasn't the shocking part. Judge Everett looked at the identification again. His hands trembled, because beneath Jonathan Carter's name was a title few people ever expected to see: Chief Inspector, Office of Judicial Integrity, the very agency responsible for investigating judicial misconduct across the entire state. Suddenly, every earlier laugh felt painfully inappropriate. The prosecutor quickly recovered. Even if ownership is established, Jonathan interrupted politely. "My son had written authorization." He produced another document, signed, dated, notarized. Henry had permission to use the vehicle whenever necessary. The prosecutor's confidence began disappearing. Judge Everett tried changing directions. "This misunderstanding appears resolved." Jonathan didn't move. "I'm afraid it isn't." He looked toward Henry. "Would you like to tell them why you refused to identify me?" Henry hesitated. The courtroom leaned forward. Finally, Henry answered, "Because Dad told me never to use his position to avoid consequences." Jonathan smiled proudly. "I've raised him to face every accusation honestly." Henry continued, "If I was guilty, I want to be treated like everyone else." The courtroom became completely silent, but he looked around the room. "I also want to see whether everyone else would treat me fairly." Those words landed harder than any evidence. Jonathan requested permission to present additional exhibits. Judge Everett reluctantly agreed. Large television screens activated. Security footage appeared, not from police cameras, from neighborhood homes. The first video showed Henry parking carefully, then checking directions on his phone. No crime. The second camera showed 3 residents watching him from their windows. One immediately called the police, before Henry even stepped out. The third recording revealed something disturbing. Police arrived with weapons already drawn. No investigation, no questions, no attempt at conversation, just assumptions. Then another video appeared, body camera footage. An officer quietly admitted the plate already came back registered. Another officer answered, "I know, but let's see what story he gives." The courtroom gasped, meaning they knew the car wasn't reported stolen before they arrested him. Everything changed. Jonathan wasn't finished. He produced dispatch records. The anonymous caller had claimed only one suspicious fact. A black teenager is driving a Bentley. Nothing about reckless driving. Nothing about theft. Nothing about violence, nothing illegal, just race. And the car. Henry had been treated as suspicious before committing any crime. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Judge Everett attempted to regain authority. This court cannot determine the officer's intentions. Jonathan nodded respectfully. Correct. But we can evaluate judicial conduct. He turned toward the judge. You repeatedly mocked a minor before examining all available evidence. You assume guilt. You encourage public ridicule. You dismiss requests for additional time. Each sentence struck harder than the last. Jonathan wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. Facts spoke loudly enough. Then came the revelation nobody expected. Jonathan wasn't investigating the police. He had been conducting a statewide review of courtroom bias for nearly 11 months. Today's hearing was never supposed to involve his own son. Henry had insisted on keeping his identity secret because he wanted the process to remain genuine. Neither of them expected events to become this humiliating. Now, the courtroom realized they hadn't merely witnessed one teenager's case. They had witnessed themselves. Judge Everett slowly removed his glasses. For the first time all morning, he looked genuinely ashamed. He stared at Henry. "I owe you an apology." Henry answered respectfully. "I accept it." Then he surprised everyone. But apologies matter most when they change future decisions. Jonathan looked proudly at his son again. That single sentence revealed exactly how Henry had been raised. Within weeks, an independent review examined the arrest. The officers involved received disciplinary action and mandatory retraining. Department policies regarding probable cause were rewritten. Judge Everett voluntarily entered judicial ethics retraining before the Oversight Commission completed its recommendations. Some believed he deserved removal from the bench. Others believed sincere accountability should allow room for redemption. That debate spread across the city. Even Henry wasn't certain where justice ended and mercy should begin. Months later, Henry returned to the same courthouse, not as a defendant, but as the keynote speaker for a youth leadership program promoting equal justice and constitutional rights. Many of the same court employees stood and applauded. This time, no one laughed. Judge Everett attended quietly from the back row. After the event, he approached Henry privately. "I've replayed that day in my mind countless times." Henry smiled gently. "I hope you replay what happens after even more." The judge looked confused. Henry continued. "People remember mistakes, but they also remember what we choose to become afterward." The older man nodded slowly. For perhaps the first time in years, he wasn't thinking like a judge. He was thinking like a student. Henry walked outside into the afternoon sunlight beside his father. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Jonathan smiled. "You could have revealed who I was the moment they arrested you." Henry laughed softly. "You taught me that character isn't proven when people know your connections. It's proven when they don't." Jonathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "And today, you taught that lesson to all of us. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't exposing someone else's power. It's refusing to misuse your own. True justice begins when we judge people by evidence instead of assumptions, and when humility replaces prejudice before authority ever has to intervene." But here's the question that stayed with everyone who witnessed that courtroom. If you had been Henry, would you have revealed your father's identity immediately, or would you have waited to see who people really were before they knew who you were?